right here. Can I move? I have questions.
Chrystal,
Hello. Yes.
you were
I
supposed
couldn't hear the music. I was just
when
waiting
the
for the
music
50
goes
seconds.
off.
I didn't never hear it.
Hello, everyone. This is the live taping
Okay.
of the Chrystal J experience with Chrystal J. I'm gonna go away, and Crystal's gonna introduce what we're doing. Okay, Chrystal, ready, set.
Okay. Hey y'all, it's me, Chrystal J. So today, it's the last day of June, so we're gonna end out June is Men's Mental Health Month. We're going to do the show today with my classmate, my friend Jeff McKinney, who's producing the show, and he has insight on mental health. We also have the infamous Coach Todd, head football coach at South Oak Cliff High School. He agreed to do my show. Thank you, Jason. Coach Todd. So we're gonna bring them on and have a conversation. Hey guys.
Hey, how you doing?
Fantastic. Kudos to you, Chrystal J, classmate, for doing what you've always done and bringing something fruitful to our community. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for everything you're doing to make this happen, because without you there's no me. Like literally. Okay, so listen real quick. Hey, how y'all doing? How y'all day was? I don't want to jump into my questions because I had to write them down because I'm old and I'm excited and nervous, but thank y'all so much for doing the show.
You're welcome. I'd like to hear a bit from Coach Todd. I know he's been making some things happen today, and so share a little bit about that before we jump in. I think that would be good.
Is that on me now?
Yep, it's on you.
Oh, pretty much today's was actually my first day of vacation. Yeah, we and actually this past weekend, we actually went to the URL State 707 tournament, and we advanced all the way to the championships. Went 7-1 for the weekend, but we lost in the championship to a real good Woodlands team. But it was a good experience. The boys got to hang around each other, kind of, play video games, hang out with each other in the hotel. So, the weekend went pretty good, even though we didn't get the results we wanted at the end. But I can say it was a positive trip for us total.
Fantastic. I did see some highlights about that. It looked like our the young man that's leading the quarterback competition at this point. He had a good amount of success that I saw that you were sharing. So that's really positive.
Yeah, he did. He had a really good weekend, and that was coming off getting his wisdom teeth pulled that Monday. And he kind of powered his way on through over the weekend. Even going through that, getting those wisdom teeth pulled.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So, Chrystal, we'll turn back over to you, and then you can tell us why we're doing this and jump into the questions.
Okay. The main reason I wanted to do it is because men's mental health, I think, is overlooked for the most part because of the stigmas. I don't think that you guys are given the platform or the opportunity to just express yourselves or share, anything like outside of who you are. Like, I know every time they talk to Coach Todd, it's just Coach Todd football. That's all we focusing on. But I want to focus on Coach Todd as a person, because I've been knowing him since I was skinny. Back in the day, Hey, Jason. So I just want to focus on stuff like that because men's mental health is really important, and it's something that we don't talk about often. And I think the people need to hear about it. And with this being the last day of Men's Mental Health Month, we should close it out, with that type of conversation.
I think it's very fitting too that, coming off of this past weekend, that on the last day, we know Coach is working like crazy hours. And this is the first day of his vacation, which that, restoration and time away is key to mental health. So kudos. Hopefully everybody knows that you're on vacation and you're able to help them understand, like, yeah, you do have to unplug. So kudos to you, Coach.
I appreciate that. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Yep.
You're welcome. So we want to jump into the questions.
Let's do it.
So, okay, Coach Todd, this first question is going to be for you, okay? Because I know you've led the team to multiple state championships, including the back-to-back wins. You know, kudos for that, 2 times. Yeah. So, in the midst of all of that success, I want to ask, how do you prioritize the mental health and emotional well-being of your players, especially coming from high pressure or with being, coming from where they come from?
I think the key thing is, number one, you have to make all kids are individuals. So, each household is different that the kids coming from. And not only the kids, but the coaches also. Everybody had different stuff going on in their life. So, what we try to do is we try to use football as just an outlet, a way where you can kind of get away from your problems in life and kind of just focus on the game. Because at the end of the day, when you go home and have to go back to sleep or go back to where where you came from, you're gonna have to deal with those issues then. So, my biggest thing is when we're doing football, it should be, hopefully it's that one time where everything else kind of leaves your thought process and you can kind of just focus on something that a lot of people say they love and really want to do. And when you go back home, you can deal with some of those other things going on in life. But at that particular time, I like to just focus on football and kind of block everything else out that's going on, whether it's good or bad, and kind of just really dive into that, because I know once I leave football, I'm gonna have to deal with real life situations anyway.
Yeah, and it gets real because, and I think just from being at the school and seeing you guys in action, you and your staff, like you guys, it's bigger than football. A lot of people don't see what y'all do, internally for these kids, and I think that's appreciated and is commended. So like I know football teaches resilience and discipline. How do you balance pushing the players to be their best selves, because they are student athletes, in a sense to where they're able to be still kids, but still go out and perform when it's time?
The first thing is that you really have to just look at the situation. And you, like I said, everything is individualized. Every kid doesn't have the same goals. Some kids play football because they want to go to the NFL. You have some kids that play, football just because they just want to be a part of something. Some people just want to be around the cool kids, allegedly. Different things like that. So, when we're pushing them, our job as coaches is not to be content with what a player is. And that's on and off the field, in the classroom and on the field. We're supposed to be looking at their potential of what they can be. So our number one job is to push a kid to a point that he never saw himself could be, actually getting to that particular point. If a kid is, when we get him, if he starts and he finishes in the same spot, then we didn't do a good job as coaches. And that, that's not as players, but also just in life. Like I tell the kids all the time, I'm a prime example. A lot of stuff that came to me in my life is because I was good to the game of football, and it's rewarded me with friendships, state championships, meeting a lot of kids, being a lot of kids right to provide some guidance that they may didn't have, or just to be there as a person somebody can lean on in times of need. So, I'm a big believer that use what kids love to get out of them what you want them to do in life. And don't mess it up, because once you mess it up, the opportunity may not come back again.
That's right.
Yeah, that another thing too, I'd say, Coach Todd and I were talking about this beforehand, and this thing is going to whoever it reaches at whatever point across the globe. And so one of the things that I would say about Coach Todd is he comes from a legacy of men that are contributing at a high rate to community and young men. And so by way of that, those young men that he's coaching get access to his grandfather and his father and all the people that poured into him. And so we should also make sure to highlight for the young men that are watching that they too have a responsibility to do these same things and take these things that coach is pouring into them and make sure that they give them in whatever way that they're called to give as well. And so I do want to make sure that we highlight that because there's a lot of folks out there that, if we're being honest, they don't think like Coach Todd. Mm-hmm. And, if something happens to that young athlete, then they just on to the next one. And we haven't seen that from Coach. We've seen him, just like he said, look at every coach, every player individually, and treat them how they need to be treated for them individually. And so I want to make sure that the young men and whoever is watching this will see that as well. We're moving into, I think, a new era into where it's about being fruitful and not fruitless. It's about when you're between the lines of life, it matters what you do. And when no one's watching, that matters even more. And so these are just building blocks that you're getting while in a program, but there's going to be a time when the training wheels come off. And so make sure you're taking all of this enrichment that's going in from this group of men that's there coaching you, and know that when it comes to the game of life, those things are still going to apply, but the person is going to be in your head and your ear, whichever voice you decide to listen to.
Yeah, that's good stuff right there. So listen, excuse me. Thank you for that. So I wanted to ask you, Jeff, because I know you wear many hats. Like you wear a lot of hats. You're a father, a husband, an entrepreneur, a community philanthropist. Like you do a lot yourself. So in doing that, how are you able to personally check in with your mental health? What does that look like on a day-to-day basis for you?
I have to be very intentional. I for whatever reason, God chose me to go through my set of experiences, and that set of experiences led me to a place where, some people would say I was broke, or I have some disabilities, or whatever the case is, but they're my reality. And so, for me to be at my best, I've got to focus on like the 5 or 6 key things that develop great mental health, or the best mental health: eating right, working out, drinking water, sleeping, spending time with loved ones. These are the things that keep you balanced. And so the other thing that kind of wraps all of that is kind of my spiritual walk. And so the thing that I learned that brought me to this place, as it relates to my mental health, is that we've been trained to allow for our value to be dictated externally, and for us to place that above our own ideas of ourselves. And that's very, very dangerous, because sometimes you're going to be called to do things that nobody else understands. And what happens when you're called to do something no one else understands and they tell you don't do it? Well, you could be missing out on what God is leading you to do. And so you have to become the person who's honest with yourself, with the right set of discipline, so that you can actually thrive in those times when you feel alone or you feel isolated. Because those are the times that get really, really tough. So for me, I focus on those 5 or 6 things, because I know that's the foundation. And I had to learn that. I wasn't taught that growing up. I had to go through a lot of therapy to get to that point. But once I got it, I get up, I work out, I drink my water, I create. I spend my time in my devotional to figure out, like, really, what am I being called to do? And then from there, I go do it. And I don't wait on anybody to tell me whether or not it's good or bad. I assess it with my own eyes and my own spiritual discernment to see whether or not this is what God is calling me to do.
Okay, thank you for that. And that's it's good that you said that, because growing up, we didn't have like the awareness of mental health and making sure you're straight. We was taught to deal with it and move on, not being able to process our emotions. And being from Oak Cliff, and Todd being from South Dallas, because there's a difference. Let the people know it's South Dallas and then it's Oak Cliff. It's too different. Can somebody let the people know? If anybody watching, please, South Dallas ain't Oak Cliff and Oak Cliff ain't South Dallas, respectfully. But like growing up, we weren't taught, especially men. I think men, from my experience, have been taught to suppress their feelings, deal with it how you deal with it, and make stuff happen. To whereas now the awareness, it's important, for you guys to be able to express yourselves. So Todd, I'll ask you the same question, like on a day-to-day, how do you deal with like aside from being Coach Todd, what about Jason? You know what I'm saying? How do you deal with your mental?
To be honest with you, that's probably one of the things that I need to improve on. It's kind of like you say, when you raise, my thing is I'm all right. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't really know how to gauge it because it's not really something that I guess I was really taught how to gauge or to know when something technically was right or wasn't right mentally. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's still a newfound thing with me. What I try to do is always be at peace, with whatever's going on. One thing I always just say about myself is that I'm never a person that goes to sleep and worry in my sleep. Like one thing, when I do go to sleep, I'm always gonna get good rest. No matter if it's something going on in life, or a death, or it could be the day before a state championship game. That's I know to sleep my best in those type of situations. But how just to gauge it, to be honest with you, I think of a song back from the era of you, Chrystal, when you were working for Def Jam. If you really go listen to Music Soul Child, Teach Me How to Love, and just apply other words in that, his explanation is kind of how I feel. Like, I mean, how do I really know what mental health is, or how do I know to check it when it probably doesn't? I've never been taught. Boy, you fall down, you break you break your leg. Everybody gonna tell you to get back up. So everything is kind of suppressed. So with it being suppressed, even at 48 years old, I probably don't know how to properly express how I feel at times, just because how I was raised and brought up. You know what I'm saying? Ain't nothing wrong with it, but the best key thing is to admit I'm not a professional. I'm not an expertise in that particular area, so I wouldn't even try to proclaim to be. I just try to be around good people, and I know good people can give me good sound advice. And now it's on me to take their wisdom and apply it, or I have to learn on my own experience.
Yeah. I will say also too, for you, Jason, you are working in your calling and your purpose, and so that solves a lot of it. You got to figure out how not to give too much, because you just like it's not really work for you. Like I watch you, so what I found. When it comes to mental health, is really about forcing yourself into places where you don't fit. And we know for a fact that you fit exactly where you are. Like, there ain't no questioning about that. Like, you're at home. So I think, you're in a very healthy situation from what I can see from 1,000 feet away, but paying attention. But I do think it would be beneficial, and we can have some circle back follow up to make sure, just some fundamental things, because you do communicate when I'm listening to you. Like I watch your stuff, like you communicate whatever it is and express your feelings. Well, the trauma comes from not expressing your feelings, from not addressing the things that are bothering you. And so that's generally like we were raised to speak up, like in in our neighborhood. For me, when I had the issues that I had, it came from not speaking up. It came from being inside of systems to where, they tell you if you speak up, then you're gonna get retaliated against, which is real. It's very, very real, and it's the reason why I build solutions that have cameras and lights on, because that joker that jumped up and was talking all that, all that whatever he was saying inside of that corporate workplace, I'm sure he doesn't want to step outside of there and we can have that same conversation. I've invited him to. And so it's about the light and being able to have a voice and be safe, which check. You've built a culture. You and Dr. Johnson and everybody else over at the school, you guys do that every day, very, very intentionally.
Yeah. And that I think that's what sets him and the other coaches apart from everybody else. Not to say that other coaches aren't intentional, but I see it. A lot of people do a lot of stuff just for accolades and all of this, but to see these men in action every day, giving more of themselves aside from coaching being father figures, being big brothers, being uncles, being mentors to these boys. It's really important, and our young men need that. You know what I'm saying? And I see them pour into these boys, and I appreciate that and applaud you and the whole staff for that. And again, thank you for this conversation. I'm gonna cry when we end, but it's okay. So listen, okay, so I got another question. Jeff, this question is going to be for you, okay?
Okay.
And we've already touched on it a little bit, because growing up, like where we're from and how we were raised, what shifted for you in an understanding the importance of prioritizing your mental health, as much as you grind, because again, you balance a lot yourself. How were you able to balance it all and prioritize what's what?
So I'll give it to you this way. You've known me since I was like 14, 15 years old. On a scale of 1 to 10, where would you say my confidence lies?
It's always been at a 9.5.
9.5, and I would probably say 11. Like,
Yeah.
I've always been a very confident person.
Mm-hmm.
Back in 2020, well, the first time, what happened was my wife was telling me she was unhappy with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was telling me this, and I was like, how could you be unhappy with Jeff? Like, I'm Jeff. What do you mean? And so after continuing to hear this for so long, I decided to go see a therapist to like figure out like somebody else that I could get some thoughts about, because I kind of told you, like, I have this thing about not allowing someone to tell me something different about me than what I see, just because people will manipulate you and tell you all kind of stuff, and it's really them and their thoughts. And so got into figuring that thing out, and actually started to understand like, hey, there's a lot about myself that I don't realize. And so kept going with therapy. And then one day I looked up and I didn't feel good about my future or myself anymore. The future looked very dark. I couldn't see where I was going to be succeeding at. I felt like I was I just felt like an outcast. And so I ended up in intensive outpatient therapy, where you go and you check in every day, and you got to fill out this paper, and they ask you what's your SI, suicidal ideation number for the day. You got to go check with this psychiatrist if it's too high or whatever the case is. And so I did that for, I think it was 6 weeks. And that was probably in 2023. And what I found out, that the reason why I was feeling that way is because I didn't feel heard, and I didn't feel safe in the places where I was trying to fit in, where I didn't fit. And so that made a lot of sense to me, because I love myself. And so, what do you mean, like, me thinking about something like that? It was the craziest thing for me, but I'm grateful for it now, because I never built any plans towards hurting myself. However, the thoughts were there. And so now I understand when somebody else talks about these thoughts, I understand that the thoughts exist, and I can talk about what I did, or provide a perspective on how to overcome that, and make sure that, like I said earlier, you're listening to the right voice, because there's all these different thoughts, and you got to sift through and figure out which one is for you. And so that's how I got to a point where it was my wife telling me that I was not making her happy. And then I was like, okay, well, I don't see a future. And then I had to go figure out why. And so that was my mental health journey, and why I'm still on it, and why I prioritize it.
Okay, thank you for your transparency. I appreciate that. Like, that's going to help so many men and individuals, to be transparent like that. I appreciate that. And we're going to get ready to wrap up, but I just wanted to say again, thank you guys just for this moment and for sharing. And men's mental health is beyond just June. I think it should be, talked about and expressed every day. So with that, Coach Todd, what advice, I have a question here. What advice would you give to other coaches working with youth, coming from, not, and I don't want to keep saying coming from like just the hood or whatever, because it's coaches, it's, for every coach, every athlete, what advice would you give a coach working with youth when it comes to, creating a culture where, things could be cultivated and, where the kids feel safe and feel where they can trust the coach? What advice would you give to other coaches in a position like you?
The first thing I would say is so sometimes it's about being transparent, and not just making kids and people around them feel like everything you do is right and perfect, and also show that you have some of the faults that other men and as a kid you had some of the same issues and problems that kids are going through right now. Then then they become to start being able to relate to you, and with the relationship part, when they can relate to you, then you can start to build some trust. And once you get that trust, what I learned with kids is if you really get the kid to buy in and trust you, sometimes even if they don't want to do something that they know is beneficial for themselves, they'll do it for a grown up because they don't want the grown up to be hurt by something that they can do. So that's what I learned with kids. It's a special place in every kid that you had a power, or certain people had a power to reach that particular kid and kind of know how to hit those buttons with that kid to make that kid want to do the right thing or want to abide by some rules, or or just run through a brick wall for you. So that's what it's always been about with me. I'm just honest with the kids. I really don't sugarcoat a lot, with the kids. A lot of times if a kid is doing XYZ, I'm going to say XYZ. I'm not going to try to downplay it and go another direction with it. If a kid is, if a kid is at school and feeling sympathy and sorrow because he don't have no dad in his life, I'm gonna tell him, man, there ain't no excuse. I ain't met my dad and I'm 48 years old. What you gonna do about what you can control? And you can't control that issue that happened a long time ago when you were first born. So I think with our staff, and not just me, but the entire staff, we're transparent where the kids can actually see what we's talking is how we really feel it, and we being really real and genuine. And them kids, they can respect that. And everybody don't want to adhere to it sometimes, but you got those special cases, those special kids, but you got to go above and beyond, and you can't get rid of them at the first mistake. You got to keep getting them along, because the thing is all about growth. I think a lot of time with adults, they try to judge a kid, has he gotten to a certain standard, but not looking where the kid started from. If a kid started with a 0 in behavior and works his way up to a 3, and just because he's not at a 7, do you just throw the kid away because he's at a 3, or do you say, hey, we got it from 0 to 3? Now let's try to get him to 6 and about progress. And I think a lot of this, what helped me is because of my special ed background, it teaches you how to look at things differently, where you're not just judging everything on a pass and a fail. If a person is progressing, then they actually passing because they're moving up. And I think that's a key thing with my staff. We got a lot of guys that came from the inner city that can relate to the things the kids are going through. And we can always tell them, hey, when we got to this point in our life, we had to go this direction because we knew that direction wasn't going to make my life better. And then the last thing is, with me, I just never want to see my mama sad. I ain't never want my mama to be like, oh, my son in jail or my son got killed. So I didn't never want to put no pain on her as far as some negative stuff that I know that she raised me better than to go through. So, even though you're a grown boy, you're going to make the mistakes. You're going to be a boy sometime. You're going to, go try to be with a girl and sneak away. Kids going to experiment with drugs. But at the end of the day, you still got to have that fear of home of your parents and your grandparents and stuff like that. And I think that's what's missing today, is that a lot of kids don't fear home anymore like we used to, or like I used to. Like hearing my granddaddy's voice going off on me about something I didn't do right was worse than a whooping. Yeah. Like I was dread that. I was like, man, golly. So it would make me, even when I made wrong decisions, like getting in trouble in school or something, I would just be like, oh my God. So, in life, I relate a lot of things to stuff like that. When my uncle, when the Carter kids were robbing after they won state and robbing place, my uncle, he took me to the courtroom because he was working with Royce West then. And I had to sit in there when they read off them verdicts and heard that 25 years, 20 years, 15 years, and that Judge Joe Kendall was just reading off them sentences. So that was a life lesson to me. Like, I don't want my mom to ever have to go through this, you know.
Yeah.
Like, the heck no. So, I took a lot of wisdom, but I also had to go through and bump my head and learn by experience too. But at the end of the day, I feared people. And it wasn't necessarily because they were bigger than me or stronger than me, but it was just the fear of those people that raised me, and I ain't never want to let them down. And that's what I try to instill in our kids. When they get to these certain situations in life, I always still have that respect for the coaching staff, the guys that help groom you, where, you don't want to let people down. But most importantly, don't let yourself down at the end of the day.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good stuff. Okay, thank you, Coach Todd. Okay. So Jeffrey, so we're gonna close it out. And I think we really pretty much went over all the questions. Because I just want to pinpoint this because you are a proud HBC graduate of Fisk University. Shout out to Fisk. Okay.
Yep.
So with you being a graduate from Fisk and being a husband, a father, an entrepreneur, and all of this, we just want to go forth and just, what advice would you give a man, to deal with his emotional and mental going forward?
I would say honesty with yourself. You also, there's resources out there. If you don't feel comfortable with those resources, keep trying. I know that in the environments that most people come from, there's a perception around mental health, and it's changing, but it's still got this kind of quote unquote crazy. Like, some people will say that, oh, Jeff has lost his mind because I create things where I'm running around with fire and lightning and wings and all the rest of these things. However, one of the reasons why I do that is to make space for other people to express themselves. If you don't express yourselves, then you keep things in, and then certain things happen to your body. And those things, you can change them, but it takes more work. Whereas it's just better for you to journal or create or express or step on the football field and, let everything else go and go out and do whatever it is that you're inspired to do out there and create. And so what I would say to anyone out there, man, woman, female, male, whatever people call themselves, or, you define yourself as, is choose joy, choose gratitude. And when you're struggling with those two, then talk to somebody. And so that the normal state of a human being is actually supposed to be joy and exuberance. But we live in a world where there's a bunch of different chaos. And so we've got to get the right resources so that we can minimize the chaos and elevate to a place that allows for us to connect with our purpose and go out and do what we're being called to do. And so that's what I would say.
Okay, guys, I appreciate this conversation. Thank you for taking the time out just to chat with me. I really appreciate it. I don't know what else to say this year because I'm just so excited.
Kudos to you, Chrystal, because you just happened to say, hey, I'm looking for someone that can help me do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, let me send you something. You saw it and you were like, let's go. It didn't have to be super polished. It didn't have to be super perfect. You knew in your mind right away, I think Coach Todd would be great at this. You put it together. And so whatever is imperfect is perfect because you actually did it. And so don't be talking about what you don't know or whatever the case is. Like, you're doing fantastic right now.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know you guys gonna be acting crazy. Okay, well, this the stepping stone. Okay, Just getting us back out there. So I'm just really grateful. I'm probably gonna cry when we get out, but it's okay because crying is expression. Myself is what my therapist said, but whatever. But I just appreciate y'all taking the time out because again, like I said, a lot of times, you guys suffer in silence, and that's I don't think that's fair. And as a woman and us being Black and all of that, we need to build a safe space for us to be able to have these type of conversations and support one another mentally, because some days aren't always going to be peaches and cream. So just to be able to understand and how to process things as they come, I think that's good, and just to keep in mind. But if y'all want to tell everybody how they can follow you on social media, Ty, you're really funny on Twitter. So definitely share your Twitter handle or X or whatever it's called, so the people can follow you, and Jeff, how they can follow you, and if they're looking for this type of platform, you're looking for a producer, Jeff McKinney's your guy. So if y'all could just share that, and then we can wrap it up.
Okay, I'm mainly on Twitter or X, formerly Twitter. I think my handle name is hashtag SockFootball1. It is my hashtag on X. On Facebook, it's just my name. On Instagram, I believe it may be Coach Todd, something like that. But just follow Sock Football and you'll find me some kind of way.
Okay, yeah, because you got a blue check on Twitter. You famous, but but you're really funny on Twitter. Okay, Jason. Jeffrey.
Yeah, so for me, the Techpreneur for the People on Instagram, you can go to www.oneintegration, click one of those links. It'll get to me some kind of way. And that's it.
Okay. Well, good deal. Thank you guys again. This is the
How can they find you? Tell the people how they can find you.
Okay, the Chrystal J Experience on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Follow me on the Chrystal J Experience. They're out and also on Twitter. So it's the same for all of the platforms. And if you would like to be a part of the show, send me a DM or an email at the Chrystal J Experience at outlook.com. We can have a conversation. I got a text today from another classmate. She's coming to do the show too. So we got some stuff coming out. So y'all follow me, stay tuned, and be blessed. Thank you.
Peace.
Thanks, guys.
Good job, Chrystal.